Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Silent Tom here, bringing you a Delmise VMAX deck breakdown, and we're going to go over some early gameplay, early turns, mapping out how we want to progress with the deck, build up our board state, and ultimately how we want to go about taking our 6 prize cards. But first, we're going to take a look at Delmise VMAX. Its attack, Swinging Chains, and Max Anchor are incredibly useful tools for setting up damage and two-shotting VMAXs without the use of boss's orders. That's going to be a really big highlight in this list, is not using boss's orders. So we have Max Anchor, which for 2 grass and a colorless can hit for 240. Now, that's really great damage. Obviously, it can knock out pretty much any V, sometimes even with tools such as Cape Toughness, which we've seen in a lot of decks like Zacian and Zamazenta. Just running those 2 units with Cape Toughness, saying, you know what, we're going to play a 2 prize game, we're not going to VMAX, and we're going to force you to take awkward knockouts, and we're hoping to win the game in 2 turns by knocking out 2 VMAXs. Whereas we say, okay, we want to play the VMAXs, we want to play that game, but we have a way to do that, the 2-shotting, more consistently than other VMAX decks will, because we don't rely on boss's orders to win us the game, which is really the big thing, is again, this is a 0 boss list. And it might seem crazy, but our first attack, Swinging Chains, does 30 damage for every grass energy attached to any of our opponent's Pokemon. We can only pick one, obviously, but any of them. And the way that this helps us is we swing for 240 with Max Anchor and say, okay, now this V is either knocked out or this V Max has just taken a big hit, right? So on the following turn, we can use Swinging Chain for the energy we already have. We don't need to invest any more energy. And we can knock it out by dealing 90 to a the bench VMAX. And that really just helps us make sure that we are staying ahead on the prize race, because while they would have to fish for boss's orders to finish that 2-shot, we can usually almost always do it on the second turn, right? We hit the VMAX once for 240, then we hit it for 90, it's dead. Or knocked out, excuse me. But that's the main play, is that we're going for this 2-shot race, and then late in the game, we either hope to set it up again on a second VMAX, or a lot of times people are teching singular V attackers to really force that extra prize needed. So oftentimes you're going to take 7 prizes in a game when you obviously only need 6, but your opponent will force you into positions where you only need to take 7. So the idea with Delmise VMAX is you take the first knockout by being ahead, a little faster, and you are a very beefy Pokemon, right? We have 330 HP. That's very strong, especially in today's game where every damage counter matters, right? That's 1 more shady dealings, or sorry, not shady dealings, quick shootings that your opponent's going to need. It's a little bit more like another psychic energy from either Alcremie or Shadow Rider VMAX, right? So it's asking a lot more of your opponent just by having that little extra HP there. But yeah, so again, Delmise VMAX, really the goal is to set up your base damage, clean it up, and then use Rose to accelerate. Rose is a lot more easy to use because we do play Rayquaza, which we'll get into later. But again, the idea is just to set up that damage, take an early VMAX knockout, and then more quickly than your opponent can, clean up the extra prizes. Because with Rose, we can get to 6 energy pretty easily, usually on turn 3. It's not hard, and then we're knocking out Probats. And if they promote any V at any point to stall, we use Max Anchor again, knock it out, and there's the game. Alright, so now that we've talked about Delmise VMAX, we obviously need the V, right? So we can't get to Delmise VMAX until we get that basic down. And this one is really good. You know, there's plenty of VMAX decks that see play where their V is really underwhelming and doesn't serve much purpose outside of some niche things. Like think Shadow Rider V, right? That first attack is pretty good, where it can stop special energy in stadiums, um, but it certainly isn't really helping you push too much, right? But in this case, we have Dhelmise V for 1 grass energy. If any of your grass Pokemon were knocked out by damage, this attack does 90 more. So that's really good. You will see we play other grass Pokemon, such as other Dhelmise V or V Max. We have Leafeon and we have Kricketune, right? So these are all grass Pokemon that if they're ever knocked out at any point in the game, for really cheap, we can get that good 120 damage. And that's pretty strong, because with Max Ankor, that swings up to 360, so that's definitely getting through anything crazy. Or if our opponents have beefy mons like those Zamazent or Zacians with Cape of Toughness, all right, we've got an answer for that. It's really solid, but the thing I find myself using most is Giga Hammer. And you might think, like, why are we doing this as opposed to just using Max Ankor for the extra 40 damage? It's the same energy cost, 2 grass and colorless. The reason why this can be good is, one, obviously, if you whiff Dhelmise VMAX. That would suck. It really doesn't happen too often in my playtesting because of how heavy we go on search and consistent draw, right? However, it can happen, and sometimes it's if you realize the game state is in such a way that you're not really going to get punished too much, the opponent's off to a really slow start, you can Giga Hammer for 200, and let's say we hit a V, right, and they have a few HP left. Okay, so the next turn, they want to get that out of the active because they're not looking to give up free prize cards, or they want to evolve it. Think Shadow Rider. If that's their only Shadow Rider V, they're going to want to evolve it either way, probably, because they only have 4 in the deck, and they want to start Underworld Dooring as soon as possible. So you swing for 200, and the next turn you can evolve into the V Max, and Max Ankor again for 240. So turn 1, turn 2, or sorry, usually like turn 2, turn 3, you can have already dealt 440 damage, right? Which is pretty aggressive as far as most decks are going. So that kind of really adds to Dhelmise V's value. In addition, he only has the 2 retreat costs, so Air Balloon can get him out for free, unlike Dhelmise V Max. And he has a weakness to fire, which isn't great. Victini is seeing play. He is popular. But it's more in the tier 2 category. So it's not a huge negative matchup. Because I would say Victini probably is an auto loss, just due to the fact that it's really hard to make that prize race trade. But it's not a bad weakness to have by any means. So we're happy to see that. Now this card, Leafeon V, is easily what enables the deck to be competitive, in my opinion. Right now we're running it at 2 copies. I would like 3. I've really been trying to... the deck initially started with 3 copies. But then I just found myself either wanting to bench it so I can Marnie and not have to draw back into it, or missing it turn 1 and then just having this card that I never wanted to use, which was rough. So I've cut it down to 2. A lot of decks that run these kind of cards that end your turn tend to come in 2 copies. You know, some people run Zacian in decks that it doesn't really belong in, just so they can Intrepid Sword turn 1, right? So they run the 2 copies to give themselves some consistency, to quick ball it out like you would a Crobat, but instead they're going for that initial draw. And here we're using the same kind of combo to either quick ball or start with it to find ourselves a Greening Cells. So the Greening Cells ability says once during your turn you may search your deck for a grass energy card and attach it to one of your Pokemon, then shuffle your deck. If you use this ability, your turn ends. So just like Zacian, it ends your turn upon use. But in my testing, I've seldom not hit this card on turn 1. So with how heavy the deck is on draw and search, you're likely to find them when you run it at the 2 copies. There is some argument for 3 still if you're really worried about not hitting it turn 1, just because its value drops off tremendously past that. But the idea is that this card enables you to swing for Max Ankor turn 2. So you play your Delmise, you attach, you get your Leafeon, you greening cells, use the ability on it. Next turn, one attachment, and we're ready to go. So that really provides a lot of aggression that the deck really needs. So now we have Rayquaza V. This is a pretty spicy inclusion, I think, into the deck, running this Rayquaza line. Or Rayquaza, depending on how you pronounce it. Let me know in the comments how that is intended to be pronounced. Either way, Rayquaza is really cool. We're not ever going to attack with it. We don't run the necessary energy, so we're never attacking with this card. The whole reason we play it is so we can get into what we'll see next is the Rayquaza V Max, another card we also never intend to play with, or at least attack with. And so you might be thinking, like, Tom, like, what's going on here? Why are we playing this card that doesn't attack? It gives up 3 prizes. What are we doing? So its ability, Azure Pulse, allows us to discard our hand and draw 3 cards. This is good for a multitude of reasons. One, if we're ever at a dead hand, we don't have anything, we don't have access to Crobat or Kricketune yet, we're chilling. We're just drawing cards still. Secondly, it empowers us to utilize Rose really well. And Rose is a card we'll review later, more in depth, but essentially it takes energy out of your discard and puts them into play immediately on your VMAX Pokemon. So the idea is that we can Azure Pulse, and theoretically we want to discard Grass Energy, so that way we can then Rose. So that's a really good tactic. That the two are very synergistic. Rayquaza decks themselves play Rose. We like the idea of not having to discard our energy like Rayquaza does and have to do it turn after turn after turn. We're just looking to get 1, maybe 2 Roses off a game and use that momentum to really just be aggressive, not have to use bosses every turn. It's like, okay, I'm setting up the knockout, then I'm taking the knockout. I'm setting up the knockout, then I'm taking the knockout. Right, and so if your opponent is choosing to forego using their VMAXs to avoid this the swinging chains, right, you're benefiting because you can easily also play a 2-prize race with our heavy copies of Switch, as we'll see, kind of playing like a Zacian deck now, except we have 330 HP and the ability to hit the bench later. So I really like Rayquaza. It allows our deck to just perform a lot faster than most people would expect. If I just start Delmise and Leafeon, people are not expecting the deck to all of a sudden recover from Marnie's really well, because Marnie is a very popular supporter. Setting you down to 4 can be devastating if you don't draw the right cards. So having Rayquaza plus Kricketune plus Crobat, as we'll see in a minute, is amazing right now. You will rarely ever be thrown off guard and put into a place where you are just top decking and praying. So for that alone, Rayquaza is an easy 3/3 inclusion, just to make sure that we're always drawing cards, we're always seeing new draws, and not dead drawing. So yeah, Rayquaza VMAX, easy 3/3. The last 2 here are debatable. I could see people wanting to cut this card specifically just because we already have such a investment into drawing in the Rayquaza and our Kricketune, right? So we already have a lot of space dedicated to just drawing cards. You might think Crobat seems like a waste because I doubt I'll have room to play it on my bench, or if I need to play it early, then I might not be able to set up a second Delmise or another Rayquaza if I really want to get 2 going to chain after a Rose. However, in Standard right now, the game does just play a little slow sometimes. Like we said with Marnie, with lots of these things, if your opponent plays these cards early to kind of slow you down, you just need, like I've seen people call it, the panic Crobat, right? So you are just in a pinch and you just have no other plays. So you just need to quick ball, discard down, and use Crobat to fill back up. It can be crucial in getting turn 1 Leafeon down when you don't have Rayquaza yet, because it's your first turn, right? So you need it for crucial turn 1 Leafeon and crucial turn 1 energy attachments, right? You can get saved turn 2 if you play Rose, but that's really hard. Turn 2 Rose is pretty hard. So you really want to A, have a Delmise, B, attach an energy to it, C, get a Leafeon to attach a second one. So turn 3, you're rolling, ready to attack with Dhelmise V for 200 or using Max Ankor for 240, right? So for that reason alone, I think Crobat is a must include, at least at 1. Initially, I did have 2 just because I thought prizing it and not hitting those 3 things on turn 1 were just too devastating. But I think with the other cards we're running, and we'll see next, our friendly grass helper, I think we can get away with 1. I think we're all right. But yeah, Crobat, definitely a 1 of, in my opinion. Now, this guy is the card I'm most excited to talk about. I was previously working at a Top Cut Comics warehouse, so they are like a Pokemon card supplier. But I bought a ton of these, thinking I would just start splashing it in all my decks like Crobat, and everyone was just giving me stuff for it. But now I think there is a really big case, because I think it really pairs well with Rayquaza. So any deck that plays Rayquaza or just has a absurd way to discard and put your hand down to 0 or 1 or 2, right, can just validate Kricketune V. Okay, so exciting stage. Once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 3 in your hand. If this Pokemon's in the active spot, you may draw cards until you have 4 in your hand. So it either gets you 3 on the bench or 4 when it's active. And you can't use more than 1 a turn. So similar to Crobat, it's just 1. They're willing to print cards that have busted ways to draw, but they do kind of keep it from getting out of hand. Like in the past with Shaman EX, you could use 4 in a turn, maybe 5, maybe 6, maybe 7, maybe 8 if you hit heads on scoop up nets, or super scoop ups rather. So again, it is reined into 1s a turn. Same with Rayquaza VMAX. You can't keep Azure pulsing with the same Rayquaza. That's why we play multiple copies, so they can each do it once. But with this card, it's even if you had, for some reason, 4 Kricketoons, you can only use 1. It's just the ability activates once. But anyway, that card alone is really good. If you Rayquaza into something, you hit your Rose, you play your Rose, you discard your hand again. Oh, guess what? Here comes 3, maybe 4 more cards with Kricketune. Lastly, Kricketune can attack. However, I would not recommend it. It's pretty sus. For grass and double colorless, you get 80 plus 80 more if you hit a heads. So, kind of like Leafeon, you're banking on coin flips to do suboptimal damage. It's probably best to just forego attacking with that. But if it's all you have, even though it is just our regular draw support engine, it can attack. You know, like dark decks love being able to technically have Crobat as an attacker. I've seen it happen. You know, this is kind of like our Crobat in the sense that we can attack with it and Leafeon. So, kind of cool. But yeah, either way, Kricketune is an auto-include, at least 1 of. It pairs so well with Rayquaza and really helps us hit the things we're looking for. So, easy include for me, and he's like cool, right? He's adorable. So, alright, so now we'll go through these pretty quick. The rest is pretty standard. We have 4 Evolutionary Incense. We want to get Dhelmise VMAX and Rayquaza VMAX. To that same idea, we want Turffield Stadium to help us get Dhelmise VMAX out turn 2 and to counter some other stadiums. Quick Ball is at 4, right? We just want the turn 1 Leafeon, Kricketune, Crobat, Rayquaza V, Dhelmise. Everything works for this card. And additionally, Great Ball is really useful, thinning down your hand and getting you the Pokemon you need. Just sets up your board. Next, we play 3 Air Balloon. It's really nice if you do start Leafeon or any of your other attackers besides Dhelmise. You pop it on there, get free retreat. Additionally, if you can put 1 on Dhelmise and retreat it for the free retreat cost, you can switch back in and get going with Dhelmise VMAX to hit with the attack that you can chain over and over. 4 research, this helps us draw. 4 Marnie. Marnie is incredibly disruptive against decks that try to extend or set up like we do without the draw support. And then finally we have Rose. So Rose is really the core of the deck. I want 4, but it can brick the deck early. So I have decided on 3 as the best. But essentially, once you get energy in the discard via Rayquaza, you can play Rose to then attach 2 more to a VMAX. So ideally, you're just going for Delmai's VMAX. If you need to retreat Rayquaza for some reason, there could be some fringe use there. But the idea is that we're going to get going on turn 1 with the max Ankor because of Leafeon and our manual attachments. And then our second Delmai's could be slow to set up. We don't have that Leafeon again unless we somehow have a turn to float, but we're probably losing the game if we use Leafeon more than once, right? So the idea is that we can, after building up the first Delmai's, on the subsequent turn, we can go ahead, attach 1 energy, and then Rose. And then right away, we're ready to go again, swing for 240, or start cleaning up bench Pokemon with the 90 Snipe. Additionally, if our first Delmai's VMAX lives, and we have 3 energy still on it, we can manually attach to our active Rose again to get 2 more energy, so bringing us up to 6. Now, this is important because it allows us to hit for 180. Now, if there were more Pokemon that had this HP level, that would be great. But right now, we're looking ideally at Crobat. So, Crobat's really nice because it gives up 2 prizes. So, once you do that, you can kind of threaten and say, hey, I can now set up a secondary VMAX, and if you play Sobble, if you play Drizzile, if you play Galarian Zigzagoon, if you play any single prize card, like Houndour, right? Any single prize card that can be hit for 90, right? My Delmai's VMAX can either a second one that I've built up or the same one if it remains unknocked out can come up and just say, all right, I've taken 5 prize cards. Now I have an easy way to take my 6th one, and in 3 attacks, I have won the game. So the theory with Rose is that it allows you to build up your attackers faster, play that aggressive strategy we've been talking about. I have debated playing 4 Rose and 3 Marnie. I think that would be a really smart decision in testing. However, I just love how disruptive Marnie can be and want to ensure that I can draw cards, or if I have a lot of Rose in one hand, it's more likely that I have a Marnie to shuffle them back in and then get back to it when I need it, right? So there is some also credibility to Pal Pad, but however, these extra tech cards and things just tend to clog up the machine that is Rayquaza, Kricketune, Crobat, etc., right? So we want to kind of make it as clean cut as possible and just say, hey, we accept losing to really bad RNG where we hit multiple copies of key cards in a row, right? That is unlikely to happen, so we play the deck as optimal as possible by assuming we aren't going to have unorthodox draws. But yeah, so the Rose, definitely one of the key cards in this deck, so very important, and 3 of. With all the trainer cards out of the way, the last piece is our 12 grass energy. It's important to have a lot, 1, so when we Rayquaza and use Azure Pulse, we are discarding grass energy to fuel that Rose. We don't mind having a second or third grass energy in our opening hands if it comes along with a Quick Ball. It can also allow us to attach to things like Leafeon or Crobat or Kricketune if we are in a really unfortunate situation where we need to retreat our 1-prize Pokemon. So it really just is kind of the number I've decided. You could go down to 11, but any less than that, and it really risks lowering the consistency of Rose, which is kind of the key component of the deck. So needing energy attachments early and late makes me feel like there is no other way around it besides having a healthy 12. However, feel free to test this deck once I have posted this video up and tell me otherwise. I would love to see success with the deck and how people feel about it. But yeah, so now we're going to go into a tabletop simulator gameplay footage. I don't have a game yet, working on that for a second video. But right now we're just going to go over early turns, how the deck sets up, and what kinds of plays that can be made with the deck, and really how aggressive we can be. Cool, so welcome to the Tabletop Simulator. If you're not aware, it is on Steam. It's relatively cheap, around 20 bucks. I use it for Vanguard mostly, as I have other ways of playing Pokemon, but I am looking to use Pokemon when I don't have cards on the other website platforms. So it seems really helpful for getting that early testing, because you can put in any images and create any card you want. You can even make your own custom stuff. But here you'll see we open up, we have our initial draw, and our starter is Leafeon, which we're actually very happy to see. I love starting Leafeon personally, just due to the heavy count of switching cards. I feel pretty safe knowing that as long as I play a draw supporter or a Crobat, I'm going to hit one of those 6, right? I have 3 switch, 3 air balloon. I draw a Dhelmise V off the top, so that's great. So right away we have all the pieces we need in just very little time. You see, we even have Quick Ball for extra insurance. It's going to allow us to set up more. Here I'm thinking I could Crobat for 3, but I think because I have so much of my initial setup that I want, I don't need to Quick Ball for a Leafeon. I don't need to Quick Ball for the Dhelmise. I have those both, fortunately. So I'm just going to go ahead and, as soon as possible, start setting up my ability to draw a lot faster. So I'm going to grab that Rayquaza. So theoretically, if I can get into the VMAX, next turn I can start Azure Pulsing, and no hand is dead for the rest of the game. As you can see here, I do have supporters, so I'm cool. And, I'm just realizing that I put my deck in the discard pile, but that's cool. Because we are super chilling here. We have everything we really want to see. We're going to put a grass on the Dhelmise, and we're also going to use Leafeon's ability to get that grass energy out. We're assuming I'm going first here, so I'm not going to play a supporter this turn, just to show you how consistent the deck can be even without a supporter. Because clearly, had my deck or hand not been as optimal and I needed more cards, that Rayquaza could have been a Crobat, right? I could have drawn 3 more. But seeing as it's not the case, I'm just going to go ahead and use Greening Cells, get that second energy. So next turn, I'm going to play a supporter and attach that second energy that I have in my hand and really get going. I'm all built up first turn, right? So that really is just showing you how consistent the deck can be with the heavier numbers. It may seem a little heavy when you run 18 Pokemon, right? That seems like a lot. But as you can see, I top deck another energy too, so that's great, because now I'm getting one in the discard pile, because I am going to choose the Sycamore, because getting energy in the discard pile is incredibly beneficial for us later game when I want to go Rose. So here we're going to draw 7 here, and as you can see, I do hit the VMAX, and just an absurd amount of balls. So I have all the search I need. Everything is here. We got 2 Great Ball and a Quick Ball. So no matter what I want to get, it's going to happen. You can also see I have the Rose. So further down the line, I can go ahead and grab 1 energy. But now I'm going to use Great Ball first, because if I use Quick Ball, that lowers the amount of Pokemon that I have in my deck. So I at least want Great Ball to hit, even if it's like a suboptimal card, just so I can have that deck thinning happen before I make my guaranteed search. So here I have 2 options, and I'm pretty sure, I don't actually know what's better. In this case, it's probably best just to grab Dhelmise to have a second one set up, because I'm definitely not planning on Crobatting anytime soon. And as you can see, I'm a little new with some of the tabletop mechanics, but we're going to figure that out. It's cool. But yeah, so we're going to take the Dhelmise V, have that more guaranteed setup. And next, we're just going to keep playing all the ball cards, because why wouldn't we want to thin our deck? And so obviously the tabletop simulator makes it really easy to shuffle your deck, just a click. Certainly a lot faster than IRL playing, but I am looking forward to getting back to that. I am wondering when they will announce when we can get back in tournaments, because that's all I really want. And you can see the Great Ball is doing exactly what we need here. I wish I could grab both Dhelmise VMAX, but that's okay. We only need 1 to get this attack off. As you can see, we hit the air balloon. We also could have hit a switch. It would have been fine, but we hit our air balloon, which is the ideal case. So we're going to go ahead and slap that Dhelmise VMAX down once I figure out how this game works. And then we're probably going to play Quick Ball and get going here. We might even see an Azure Pulse, but with Rose in hand, it seems unnecessary. And yeah, so we are going to Quick Ball, and we're going to get rid of the Marnie, because again, Rose is a key resource. We don't want to discard that unnecessarily. And we have more draw if we're really in a pinch. Here, this is super up for debate, but I think I am just going to go get the Cricketune, just because Crobat is nice, but Cricketune will allow me to draw more cards in the long run. So since I'm not in that panic Crobat mode where I need cards, right, I'm more than happy to just play the more long-term resource. So that shows you kind of how you want to prioritize Cricketune versus Crobat. If you need it right now, Crobat's the option. If you just want to have a little extra draw every now and then, and again, paired with Rayquaza, it's going to filter even more. So the two combo really well as opposed to just going for the Crobat. Here we got a Rayquaza, and so I'm more than happy to grab that and probably would play it down. I don't know if I will here, but I think that's just okay. You want to have double Azure Pulse set up, and almost no card in our deck is unreachable with that much extension we can make if we were to hit the second Rayquaza. But as you can see here, we're about to retreat with this Leafeon, and we could either hit anybody for 90 or swing for 240. At this point in the game, we can probably assume that he has a V up. So if we swing for 240, we would take 2 prizes. But under the idea that he has a V max, we're going to explain how this damage works, right? So if we hit for 240 while he has a V max, we would do 240, so we would have 4, 6 dies, which is obviously a lot of damage, but not quite enough to take the knockout and take 3 prizes. But seeing this is turn 2, I'm assuming, one, this Dhelmise has not been quick shootings yet, right? So it's fresh. It's got 330 HP. It's living, right? There's no way outside of some crazy Alcremie play or Victini, of course, that this is going down. So we feel very comfortable that we're going to take 2 more attacks. So we're going to attack twice additionally with this Dhelmise VMAX. So I'm doing the 240, making some other decisions. You know, you have to debate whether to keep Air Balloon or what you want to put it on. I like to prioritize putting Air Balloon on Cricketune because you want to pivot into that guy and then retreat it after you've gained your additional card. But here, let's just say we hit for 240, and let's say that Pokemon then retreats, right? So that 240 damage is on your bench. And you're saying, wait, Tom, you got no boss, right? Well, Swinging Chains comes in a very clutch way. I don't have to worry about digging for that. I can prioritize just searching for boss, searching for energy, searching for Pokemon. And on my second turn, I can go, hey, I could do 90 to anything. If I rose this turn, I can get another one on, right? I can attach from hand and make it 150 if I need to, right? But here we can just say that this is just fine, right? He has 240 plus 90 gets you up to well above 320, and we're going to take 3 prizes, right? And now for the rest of the game, this thing is 2 prizes or 2 attacks away from dying, most likely, right? And in addition to that, you're 3 prizes away from taking the game. So you knock out a V next turn, right? Take 2 more prizes, and then take a single prize knockout, and you're set. Otherwise, your strategy is to use the switching cards, right, to hit the V max and try to 2-shot. So either way, you are all set. But yeah, guys, that'll do it here, and thank you so much for watching. We hope to get a gameplay video in soon for Dhelmise V Max. But alright, thanks guys. Peace.